it approaches both of the key concepts in a broad and open way. So migrants could be also refugees, asylum seekers. It's not sticking into institutional categories. And volunteers is also about different forms of civic and social participation, activism, formal or informal. VI has tried to do three things, basically, reflected on on the work that is also published. One was to do a study in the four participant countries using similar tools, quantitative and qualitative, and come up with the state of the art on the intersections between migration and volunteering and the extent of volunteering among migrants, and a comparative report and synthesizing from the four countries' experiences. The other was to build capacity, that is to create, to strengthen potential volunteers from migrant communities, orient them, but also organizations who work with migrants or most usually for migrants, to sort of have an idea of the key issues in volunteering with migrants, but also in involving migrant volunteers and training them. Yeah, the third one was a series. The idea was to establish volunteering opportunities through different means, by spreading the word through workshops and roundtables that academic partners did, us included, by using the tools developed in the previous, in the other sort of work package to train trainers and then train and involve migrant volunteers themselves and engage them. A film project that involved volunteer and on volunteerism in art production for inclusion, and a radio project, an empowering sort of activity for a group of women to set up their own radio project. I think that's the basic in terms of activities. It was on several steps. It was a challenge to have a consortium in 4 countries. That's not a problem. Usually it could be more, but of so many different partners, different kinds of partners, that is universities, radio program, radio station, NGOs, big humanitarian NGOs, municipality, and so on and so forth. So, and an artistic NGO, anyway, different types of actors. This, as a broad outcome, it has worked. That was for the project itself, but for the field, the actual activities, the topic, one had to do with at least I can say mostly from the perspective of working in Greece. Not just for us as Aristotle University, but also our team, but also for the partners we had in Athens and Piraeus. But I have a sense that similar issues have been going on in Italy, and both partners there, they came up with, and to a lesser extent in the other countries, for a number of reasons. I'm talking about the fluidity and the very fast pace of things are changing in the last 5 years in terms of policy, in terms of people and life trajectories. Migrants, refugees, let's say, who were here in 2018 might not be here anymore, might be in Germany now or Sweden. So all this flow that continued somehow. Not everybody, of course, but they can move on with their lives, and probably they want to, find stability. But also with volunteers in general, whether of migrant or of native background, also with they may get young people, for instance, who may then get a job and then have less time to volunteer. There were some practicalities in terms of challenges again, related, not really related to the subject and topic, because from early spring last year, we had to deal with COVID and lockdown, and that obviously did not allow us, in many other perhaps more serious instances, all activities to sort of be implemented. We did most of them, but it was not just for the project as such and the tick boxes as such, and the tick boxes that doing a project your founder also looks at, but it's also the that would be an awareness raising festival. That would be nice to have it with film screenings and talks and probably some music. This a feast of migrants volunteerism and participation and so on. So that would be nice to have rather than anything tick a box. And I think something else I mentioned the other day in terms of a challenge or a difficulty perhaps is that that other thing we were not able to make. It was a challenge though. It was a tool, a platform, a matchmaking tool for needs and organizations and potential volunteers. And that was pre-built but never came to be implemented. It is related obviously to COVID and lockdown and the slowdown of you could not go out either anyhow, at least so you could not have this on a formal level. But it was even a challenge when we start designing it, in the sense that maybe it replicates things that they're already out there and some organizations do use, while others perhaps no, not at all, have never thought about it. But they're using other tools, other forms like, new sort of smartphone apps for communication, such as Viber or WhatsApp, for this sort of purpose. Oh, we need somebody who speaks Arabic in this part of the city. And then there is a network of, people who may respond, and that's how it works. Do we need to do something more sophisticated since people are already addressing their needs in that way? Let's talk a little bit about the strengths. We did do a number of things that I'm proud of, apart from coordinating a project. That is, I think, as Aristotle, apart from the coordination that we had, we were mostly involved in the first and third, not so much just the supervision, sort of monitoring of the second. The first was the study, as I said, and this was really a learning process, not least because we were not that familiar, me and my team, but also some of the others, partners, in terms of dealing with working on migration-related issues, but not specifically on civil society and social participation and volunteering in particular. So it was a learning process at the first place. We've learned things. We've learned how the contradictions that I was talking about before. We've learned the dynamics, all possible levels. That is the individual who volunteers or takes action, the organization, again, who can be an informal group of people that later on will become, an NGO or a non-profit. There's no NGO status. The legal status in Greece, in particular, is very for volunteerism in particular is very fragmented and really it's non-existent practically. You have bits and pieces of legislation here and there, for example, in civil protection, but then some people told us this, that from organizations, that is, they had, labor inspections, and they find volunteers, they find the organizations for illegally employing those who were volunteers. And in a country with such a big estimate of informal economy and, unregistered employment, much exploitation going on out there in the labor market for both migrants and natives, especially younger people and women, for instance, whatever the nationality. It's a bit silly to have this sort of thing happening because you don't have a real, framework. So that was something that came up, just to give an example, and many other things. That also in a comparative basis. So one is the study. The data itself and the actual situation on the ground may have changed because that study took place 2 years ago, literally summer to spring, summer, early autumn, September, and September it had finished in all countries. So it's a bit dated in the actual sense, but there is a potential, especially at the academic level, to enter, to make publications, to go to conferences, things that are already happening, at least for those of us who are from academia. So that's, and find ways to understand, to interpret, to make sense of it, see theories and concepts, that is. And perhaps do some additional work, take it further, see how things evolved, developed on the ground in that sense. The other thing that I think was and probably is to some extent for some of the partners a strength, now that the project is finished, is some of our pilot actions. Those I referred to before, that different partners were doing different things. So universities were doing roundtables and workshops, and we did a mini conference here in Thessaloniki. But the non-profit organizations were either, depending on their sort of background and capacity, trainers, the people who are receiving new volunteers from the migrant communities, yes, and also and organize the training session where this training was put in practice, yeah, for new volunteers. And then apart from the training, some other organizations did a follow-up step. So volunteers who had been trained were actually involved, engaged, and that was, the experience was kind of evaluated and assessed. Then there was the field project I mentioned, the radio show. So some of those seem to have a lasting impact. For example, in our case, we met people from the civil society that we probably knew some faces. Thessaloniki is a big village, some people say, but still we never, had the chance to talk to each other and actually work together. And this led to further collaborations beyond VI that partly have to go around the same things, although not necessarily civic participation or volunteerism, but around similar things, and perhaps expanded from the migrants to society at large, including everybody, whether of migrant, refugee, or old refugee of the 20s, whatever the background, yeah? So, yes, this happened here, and as I learned, it happened also in the case of Italy. Synergies, that is not just within, certainly, but not just within academia, but also between academia and civil society, and in some cases local authorities, local municipality, for example, that can at least find some common ground for working together and have a continuation on what was done and produced during the project, and the boxes are ticked. And also for some of our partners in Austria as well, that was a bit of a different there. You had the non-profit sector mostly represented, and the radio, which is a community radio, it's not a private one, it's not a state one. So that was another interesting thing. But anyway, I think that, there's been quite some interaction in some cases. I'm not saying, 10 partners, everything worked perfectly, no. Of course not. And we had troubles between them, but in some cases, things seems to have worked in a way, not just to do the job, but also to network, to collaborate with others, to meet people. I was telling you the other day, this with these little things that to me were, count very much, in a sense that we met few people below 8 or 9 of recent refugee arrivals, let's say, of that sort of background, and who somehow we became we came in touch through the study or later on through the pilot actions, and developed a sort of relationship. And then for example, that was that after the lockdown, meeting somebody from this group on the street, and how are you? What's going on with your interview, your asylum interview, and so on. What happened with the classes that we could not help too much as such. Yeah, we were only giving information and networking with organizations. So, but that's a very good sense. And then receiving an email, sometimes not being able to respond in essence, but at least seeing that some people saw something in that. It's really important.